Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Hope that you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. Super excited to be back with another episode with my friend Vince Warnock, who is a award-winning business and marketing strategist, coach, author, and host of the Chasing the Insights podcast. Vince, my man, what is going on? How are you today?
Michael, I am so much better now that I'm here with you. I just get to hang out. I know we're doing a podcast, but hey, man, God, it's just you and me hanging out. That's good fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm super excited to be here with you today. So, for background, because you and I happen to know each other, and I thought to myself, man, I got to have Vince come on. He's got an amazing story, an amazing journey, this amazing thing that he's trying to build with the podcast. But for context, can you tell the listeners a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Oh man, yeah. Well, once upon a time in a galaxy far. No. So my background's pretty interesting. I came from I know similar to probably a lot of your audience as well. Came from a broken family. So as an abusive household, I lived with abuse through most of my childhood. We grew up in poverty. We literally, man, my parents used to send me down to the shops to steal the food from the back. So we actually had food on the table for our kids. So through all of that, never thought I had any chance of success. Like success was a weird foreign kind of concept, you know. I had no role models in my life. I had no examples of how I could break through all of this. In fact, we literally were taught that anybody who had wealth, anybody who had success, that was them and we are us. We are not worthy of that, as in they don't deserve it. We should have it, but we're not worthy of it, so therefore we don't get it. It's just such a weird mentality to grow up in. So grew up in that environment and started then becoming an entrepreneur at age 11. I decided I needed to escape this. I needed control. I needed something I could hang on to. So I learned how to make money and I learned how to start a business. And that then started my whole trajectory. I ended up studying electronics and computer engineering and software engineering. Got really bored of that really quickly, kind of transitioned into working on radio, working in many different industries, and then became a marketer. And that started this whole transition through my career of going in and out of both entrepreneurship and corporate life until I found myself selling my largest company ever, which was Common Ledger. That was a big 8-figure exit, which was very exciting. After 3.5 years, it was very, very exciting. And then joining the team at Cigna Insurance as the chief marketing officer, and did that for about 5 years until, and this is the crazy part, man, did that for 5 years. And, you know, talk about success and not believing in yourself and blah, blah, blah. I'm sitting there on paper, everything's absolutely crushing it. I'm sitting there in my really awesome office and I'm looking at this going, man, the results I'm getting here are phenomenal. Like I've doubled the revenue of this place. You know, we've grown and grown since the time I've been there. We were the 7th largest insurance provider and now we're in 2nd place. And online sales, the thing that everyone said you can't do. You can't do online sales when it comes to insurance. I'm like, amateurs, hold my beer, let's do this. We took it from less than 2% to around 48% of our overall revenue. So on paper, it's all looking amazing. Published my first book while I was there. I'm like, wow, this is pretty sweet. Got a heap of awards, even got recognized by Adobe as one of the top 50 marketers in the world, and realized I was completely, utterly miserable. I was really unfulfilled. I wasn't enjoying life. Certainly wasn't enjoying my job, and realized I needed a change. So that all came now about November, December 2019. Made the decision over that Christmas break that's it, I'm out of there. Talked to the CEO. She thought I was nuts. Literally said to me, do you know how much we pay you, man? I'm like, yeah, but that's not about the money. She goes, I don't understand. I'm like, that might be why I'm moving on. So left there. And the whole goal, Michael, was to leave there to become an author. I wanted to write my next book and I was going to write full time and that was going to be it. That changed after about a week when I got insanely bored. Writing one book turned into 2 books. Now I've got 4 books being published this year, another 3 next year, and then launched the podcast, of course. And the whole world then turned upside down because of COVID. And a lot of the businesses that I was interviewing for my book, I'm writing a book on imposter syndrome. A lot of the people I was interviewing for that all said the same thing, which was, hey, Vince, we'd love to help you. But right now we're kind of freaking out. We've got no revenue coming in the door. We've got all the same overheads. We're beaten. We're trodden down. We just don't even think we're going to exist in 2 months' time. So that started the next transition of my career, which, as you mentioned, was being a marketing strategist and a marketing coach. And that really came about just from not being able to stand by and let that happen. I remember looking at my wife and she goes, you're going to have to help, aren't you? And I went, yeah. And she goes, you're going to have to get in there and help. Yeah, okay. So I jumped in and said, look, let me come alongside you. Let me see what I can do. and discovered very quickly that all of them said yes, but we had no casualties. Every single one of them managed to turn around into profitable during a lockdown. In fact, 3 of them doubled their revenue, and we even had 1 triple their revenue through that. So that started the most fulfilling thing I think I've ever done, which is what I do now, which is getting alongside entrepreneurs, business owners, empowering them, giving them confidence, and helping them to find that success that I never thought I could have when I was a kid.
Wow, that's quite the story, man. And I took some notes while you were speaking and just thinking about so many different parallels that I've had in my life and yours.
Yeah.
Growing up very young, stealing food to survive, being entrepreneurial, and just looking at life. And even though there was always this measurement of like I can do better, it took me a long time to wrap my head around the idea that I was like allowed to have success.
Yeah.
And I wrote a note here that I want you to go into. You said I grew up with this mindset in this family of not being worthy of success, of looking at the other people and going, that's those guys, this is us. We're never going to be able to transition into that. And I think so many people suffer with that. And I call that money trauma, right?
Yeah.
I look at, call it, abundance trauma, wealth trauma, because the reality is, I grew up, I was homeless. I stole food to survive. And look, I'm not a billionaire. I don't know that I will ever be, but I live life through this abundance mindset where I go, yes, I deserve to have this.
Yeah.
What was it for you at such a young age that drove you to say, I'm going to go figure this out because I don't like what's happening right now?
Yeah. I think, well, I actually, there was one very clear reason, which was somebody speaking into my life. And I think that happens to a lot of us, but there was this growing frustration in me, and this growing, I was getting to the point where I'm a child and I wanted to snap, as in I was sick of being afraid. I was sick of living in fear, which I lived in all of the time at home. School was my happy place, so that was where I kind of escaped to and things like that. But I never wanted to go home. It was like, this is not where I want to be. So there was part of me that was just boiling on the inside of this and just going, it's something needs to shift and change. And then I remember when I got to age 11, so we have, the way the schooling system here works in New Zealand, we have what we call primary school, so that's age 5 to 10. Then we go off to intermediate, which is for 2 years. That's age 11 and 12, and it's a transitional school before we go to what we call college. Everyone else seems to call high school. But at age 11, I find myself in this intermediate school, and I was a bit of a cheeky kid. I was very, very bright, and I lived in a very low decile, so a very impoverished kind of area of New Zealand. And I remember the teacher was getting us to do, there's a couple of things. He said to me one day, he said, oh, look, we're going to do these projects. Each of you has to do a presentation on it. And I was doing one on sharks or something. And I said to him, well, why are we worrying about presentations? When are we going to get the opportunity to do a presentation? And he goes, okay, well, how about now? He said, come up the front, Vince. And I was like, oh, crap. So I go up the front and you go, okay, class, Vince is going to do a presentation right now for 5 minutes. What topic is he going to do it on? Now, 11-year-olds are inherently creative. I kid. So all they could come up with was an egg. And they thought that was hilarious. So he said, you've got 5 minutes to speak on an egg. He gave me 20 seconds to prepare. And he said, right, your time starts now. Now, at the moment he said your time starts now, the only thought in my head was literally, when someone said egg, all I could think of was that old stupid thing of what came first, the chicken or the egg. So that's what came out of my mouth. He goes, go. And I said, okay, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And then I don't even remember the rest. It's like my brain went into a different kind of mode. And I just started talking and people were laughing. And I was taking them on this journey for 5 minutes. And then he goes, right, you've got 20 seconds left, Vince. And everyone was completely engaged. It was like, honestly, it was like a drug. I'm just sitting there going, these people are just leaning into what I'm saying here. So then I just got to the last 20 seconds. I managed to wrap it all up and said, and obviously the chicken came first. And the crowd goes wild, but the class just went nuts. And I remember turning around to the teacher, and it was like this buzzy feeling on the inside, man. But I turned around to him and he goes, Vince, that was actually fantastic. He said, seriously, man, you've got a gift. Do you realize you could do something really significant with this? And those words were so foreign to my brain, were so bizarre to hear out of his mouth. That's like something from a movie. That's like something I would have seen on TV. It's definitely not something I would have seen in my own life. And I had this weird feeling on the inside, and I couldn't remember what it was. I couldn't think of what it was, but it was this sense of somebody believing in me. And that itself was one of the most pivotal points in my life, because two things happened there. One, I started to actually think that I could do something significant with my life. It actually shifted my thinking there because someone had spoken it into me. But the second thing I realized is that feeling that I had, that intense feeling of someone believing me, that's what I wanted for other people as well. I want everybody to have that same opportunity, to be able to know that they are actually worthy, that they know that they actually deserve happiness, they deserve success. So that's why it's kind of automatically transitioned to where I am now, because what I do now is literally helping people with that, you know?
Yeah, that's powerful. And I think I feel so reminiscent of a moment that I had very similar to this. Teachers play an important role in our lives, and
Yeah.
and I think as much as they can make our lives better, they can also make our lives worse, because sometimes it's
Yeah.
it's that single thing in passing. Well, 99 out of 100 kids would have had that experience and it would have done nothing for them, right?
Yeah.
Or worse, it might have belittled them or made them, the teacher could have reacted in a number of ways. And on the other side, you got the one where you're like, wow, this is this amazing experience where Vince is impacted in a way that it changes the trajectory of his life. I
Yeah.
was 18 years old and I didn't graduate high school on time, your college. And so
Yeah.
the teacher goes, Mr. Bush, I'll never forget him till the day I die. I walk up to his classroom. I knew that he had failed me. I knew I'd had to go to summer school. I wasn't going to graduate with my friends. I was literally the laughing stock of the school. And he comes, I go up to him and I say, Mr. Bush, I can't believe you failed me. And he goes, I didn't fail you. You did this. He said, on the
Oh,
first day of school, I told you the only thing you had to do was check in with me. Make sure that you check in with me and do homework. That was it. Because I
yeah.
wasn't going to his class. It was 7 a.m. I was out selling drugs at night. Not happening.
Yeah.
And, he's a teacher. He'd seen everything for years. So he's not surprised by this. And he goes, check in with me and do homework. I did that 0 times, Vince. And at the end of the semester, he said the most important thing anyone has ever said to me in my life. He
Yeah.
goes, the thing about life is you are going to have to work for everything that you want. If you want something, you're not going to get by on your charms and your good looks. You're going to have to work. And that changed everything for me. I think about that often because, there are the ups and downs of this journey. Like whether you're measuring success against money or happiness or whatever it is in your life. And we often get in our own way. Right.
Yeah.
We get in this place in our life where we're looking at it and we're like, yes, people are speaking into us. And yes, we feel inspired. Yes, we feel motivated, all of those things. But there's still that moment where that fear, or what some people call imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
where you're like looking at your life and you're going, money doesn't equal happiness, but I keep coming here every single day, until the moment where, for lack of a better term, you just break and you go, I'm done. What I'm always trying to figure out is it possible to mitigate the risk of that happening? Right? How do you give someone the tools to create this massive change, to have courage in their life despite fear, and make that decision sooner?
Yeah, that's a tough question, man. I think part of it is helping them to understand their journey, understand what they've been through. And this was a big other pivotal moment for me was I remember despite having that moment with that teacher, Mr. Few, his name was, honestly, really inspiring teacher. The other thing he did for me, by the way, slight tangent, but he we were talking about maths one day and we were like, you don't use maths in the real world. We were kids. We found that really funny. You don't use maths in the real world. And he goes, well, I'll tell you when you are going to need it. And we're like, what? And he goes, in 4 years' time, when you do your what we call school C maths. He said, when you do your school C maths, you are going to need to learn that. Otherwise, you're going to be humiliated. And he goes, and I said, oh, we'll be fine, or some cheeky comment. And he goes, okay, then here's what we're going to do. Over the next 3 weeks, I'm going to teach you calculus, simultaneous equations, and basic algebra, the 3 components of the major maths exam. He goes, and then you're going to sit a mock exam. And he had like old copies of previous exams. And it backfired on him big time because we did this. The whole class were really annoyed with me, by the way, because it was my cheeky comment that got us there. But at the end of, we sat that exam, right? It was a 3-hour exam. We sat the exam. And at the end of it, it backfired because 2 of us actually passed. In fact, one of them in the class, he got, because you had to get a 50% pass rate, he got something like 60 something, and I got up around the almost 90% mark. And that's when the teacher went, oh, okay, well, obviously learning normal maths isn't going to work for you guys. So he pulled us aside every time we learned maths, and he would teach us advanced maths. And therefore, when we got to college, or our high school, our college, I didn't even really need to turn up to maths. I could pass that exam in my sleep. And the lowest mark I got from any of my high school ones was around 98% for maths. So I'm like, this is a piece of cake. But so even despite all of that, I still couldn't really break through properly. And what I mean by that is I had tried to launch a couple of businesses early on in my career. I was still really, really young back when I was young. And And they kept hitting the ceiling. Something went wrong, something I did screwed up, something just didn't quite click, and I ended up having to shut those companies down. And I was having a pity party with a friend of mine, and I was moaning about the fact that it's not fair. It's not fair that I had to grow up in the family that I did. It's not fair that I didn't have the opportunities that other people did. How come I didn't have anyone that could teach me basic finances, or could teach me how to build a business, or any of those kind of things? Why did I didn't not have those role models when I was a kid? And I think I was annoying him, because honestly, I was having such a pity party. And he turned around to me, he goes, "You do realize something, Vince?" I said, "What?" And he goes, "Everything you've gone through, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, every single part of that actually counts for something." And this was something that baffled my brain. I was like, "Huh? What do you mean?" He goes, "Well," he said, "I wouldn't wish the bad stuff that happened to you on anybody, right? And neither would you. I wouldn't wish any of that. I wouldn't wish your upbringing on anybody, anything like that." And he said, "But I tell you what, it's made you into who you are now. And I happen to think you're pretty awesome." And that was a moment where I realized that we can either be held down by a lot of that. We can actually kind of look at that like I was, in a victim mentality, or I can break through that and go, "You know what? That has made me into who I am now. And who is that person?" I had to learn to define myself. I had to learn that the things that I've been through helped me to be empathetic towards other people. It helped me, like when I deal with anybody who's been through abuse, I can empathize with them because I've been through that myself, but I also know how to break through that. So this shifted my mentality. And I think, because there's no magic bullet, I think, for anybody. You can give them all the tools, like you said. You can give them all the tools, the methodologies. I can teach any entrepreneur how to make money. It doesn't mean they're going to make money. They have to show up for that. But to do that, I think they have to understand who they are, and that comes from the journey that they've been through. So I think if we articulate that, if we help them to own that story, to own their past, to own who they are now, more importantly, then I think that's going to help them to break through a lot of this stuff and actually turn up as themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think so much of this, and look, Vince, I think we both can agree it's difficult, right?
Oh yeah, man.
People,
Yeah.
I often get this. People look at me and they go, "Well, you're somehow special. You somehow figured it out." And I go, "Well, Vince did too." And I don't think Vince is any more special than I am. I don't think he knows anything more than I know. I think that it's
Yeah.
a situation where, when you play the victim, which I did for a very long time, so I always
Yeah.
raise my hand to this.
Yeah.
And then you look at it from this space of accountability and you say, well, actually, the reality is I'm not culpable for those things. It's
Yeah.
not my fault I was abused. I was homeless. I had parents who didn't do what they needed to do, a community who didn't support me. That's not your fault. Like, I think we
Yeah.
both can agree on that. But
Yeah.
there becomes a point in your life where you have to measure your behaviors and your inadequacies and the things that you're not doing to take care of yourself, and recognize that it is on you.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a difficult thing for people to palate. And look, that was my experience too. That's how I found myself at 25 years old, 350 pounds, drinking myself to sleep. Everybody knows
Yeah.
the story. And then you have this moment where you say, I am going to take responsibility for my life. And it's difficult. And it's this incredibly hard journey, because we sit here and we always are in this place of measurement. And what I mean
Yeah.
by that, we're always looking at other people. Why can't I have this? Why can't I have that? And I just think about this, like, you can. You can. So, Vince, what I'm curious about, how do we help people understand that they're capable of having that? And people will use the word
Yeah.
abundance. You can define that however you are. I just think about making your life different. How can we help
Yeah.
people understand that?
I think one of the things we need to do, Michael, is first we need to address this whole thing you just talked about, which is, because I do this as well. It's that comparison analysis stuff where we go, "Oh, I want to be like that person," or "I'm not like that person," or "I'm not like this person," and things. But what we discovered, like one of the funny things I found out is, and this is crazy news to a lot of people, we're all actually pretty similar. Like you said, we're not any more special than each other. We're just individual. And what I mean by that is, often the people that we put on those pedestals that we want to be like, or the people that we're comparing ourselves to, they're not even there, right? This is our interpretation of where they're at. And I found this out firsthand when, so I got the ultimate honor of being recognized as one of the top 50 marketers in the world. And that was, for somebody who suffers from imposter syndrome a lot, by the way, that was a little hard to swallow. I'm sitting there going, literally, you want a list? I can give you a list of 100 people that are better than I am at this. Come on, people, think about what you've done here. Or I thought when I went over to San Francisco, and they were announcing that the 25 keynotes at this conference, they were the top, basically the first cohort of the Fearless 50, which is the top 50 marketers. And I'm looking going, this is insane. Obviously, they've got the wrong Vince Warnock, and they're going to click, and I'm going to get up on stage, and it's like, oh, it turns out there's two of you with the same name. Duh, oh, moron. So I went through all of this. But one of the things I discovered was I'm there at this conference being recognized with all of the people I look up to in the industry. And these are the people that I idolize, the people I consume every book that they write, I consume every talk they put out there. For starters, I was going to hear them face to face, which in itself was like, whoa, this is going to be amazing. But then you're at this thing, they all want to go out to dinner afterwards, and they want to go out drinking. I learned two things there, by the way. Number one, Americans are lightweights when it comes to drinking. I'm sorry, but I'm a Kiwi. When we go to a whiskey bar and you guys are sitting on the floor going, and I'm like, guys, I'm not even slightly buzzed. But anyway, so I learned that. But I also learned that when people start to open up, they start to show you aspects of their lives, and you realize these people that I put on these pedestals that I want to be like, that have these ideal lives, these ideal journeys, these ideal careers, are actually as much of a hot mess as I am. And I remember talking with one of my big idols. I won't name him. I don't want to embarrass him, but I remember talking to one of my big idols, and I was just buzzing that I was even in the same room as this person. And he's chatting away with me, and he goes, oh, and he's getting further and further drunk. But he goes, Vince, you don't understand, man. It's so tough out there. He said, I'm pretty sure my girlfriend's going to leave me. I went, what? And he goes, yeah, man, her spending's out of control. And just, I know she's not happy. And I just don't feel worthy, man. Seriously, she's going to walk. And he goes, and the worst part is all the spending has meant that I'm struggling financially. And I'm going, hold on. A, why are you telling me all this? And B, I looked at this person as though they had the perfect life. I looked at this person and I used them as a benchmark. I said, okay, if I'm not where they are, then that gap between me and them is my failure. That's the gap of what I haven't achieved. Instead, I started to realize, actually, that gap wasn't the gap at all. They were all over the place as much as I was. We're all individuals. We're all flawed. We're all failed. We're all just human beings trying to get by. Now, that level up, understanding that we're all in the level playing field will help you to understand that you deserve as much as anybody else. You've got as much right to success and love and happiness, all those things, as any other individual on this planet. So I think that for me is one of the things we do need to address, is this comparison. So stop comparing ourselves to other people, because they're not even there. That's our interpretation of where they're at. Instead, look at where you've come from. Look at how far you've come in life. Look at the lessons you've learned along the way, so the things that you've done, the failures that you've made, the scar tissue that you've got from it. Look at the successes you've had. Look at all these different things and measure where you are now based on where you were before, not where you're perceiving you should be.
Yeah, I subscribe to that in such an intense way, because I'm a firm believer that the narrative of life is much like literature, in that it's a you versus you narrative.
Yeah,
And
100%.
and when you look at life from the scope of comparison or jealousy, it leaves a lot of room for misinterpretation. Because
Yeah.
the reality is, and it's so funny, because I'm lucky enough to have really incredible mentors in my life, people who would go, how did you get in connection with that person? And when
Yeah.
you're in connection with that person, what you recognize is, like, they have mentors too, right?
Yes, definitely.
Everyone is in this journey. They're looking at the person one step ahead of them, so they can go and create the life that they want to have. And I think about that every single day. And for me, it started with this idea of, okay, where do you begin? What is step one? What does it actually take? And I measure this idea of my life and what I want to build and what I create against the goals that I've put in place. And I just go, okay, what do I have to do to get there? How do you get there? I think one of the hardest parts about this, Vince, is that people are terrified to write down their goals, because it's often preceded by, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. Who am I to have this thing?
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you navigate that.
Okay, one of the first things, well, one of the things I did, which was a funny thing, because I've suffered, we call this imposter syndrome. Obviously it's a sense that you don't belong at that table, the sense that you don't deserve the success that other people have, or the sense that you're going to get found out. Everyone's going to know you have no idea what you're doing. By the way, I would argue that none of us know what we're doing. Honestly, we're making this journey up as we go along. That's absolutely A-okay. That's not a problem. But there was a couple of kind of pivotal moments for me. I remember one of them was I was looking at other people's successes. And I started looking at these entrepreneurs that I looked up to. I was looking at these people that were making, mega coin off what they're doing. And I started to realize there was actually no pattern in amongst these people. You had Harvard graduates there who'd grown up in wealth and grown up and are surrounded by people that could, help them and mentor them, and people that gave them good role models for all this. And they were, star pupils going through. And I was like, okay, well, they were obviously always going to succeed. And then you had the high school dropout. You got your people like Russell Brunson who failed at doing a marketing school, failed at doing all these different things, and yet was crushing it. And I'm like, the only consistent thing here is they believe in themselves. They've actually realized that they've got as much right to this success as all of us. Because if you look at it, the one thing that holds us back isn't other people, it's ourselves. It's our own thinking. There's a conversation, I share this a bit with a peer of mine, a friend of mine, and she was somebody who consistently turned up online. And what I mean is, Facebook Lives multiple times a week, constantly putting content out there, engaging with different people, just a very vibrant kind of hyper-personal type person. And I was like, right, this is cool. And she's a good friend of mine. And I thought, I knew she was going through a launch, so I thought I'd reach out to her and see how things are going. And I had a look and realized she hasn't actually turned up on social for a couple of weeks. She must be on holiday. So I thought, oh, yeah. And then I was like, oh, no, hang on. She's in the middle of a launch. There can't be a holiday. So I get confused. So I just sent her a message and said, hey, just checking in. How you doing? How you getting on? And she came back with 2 words: I'm okay. Now, I'm okay from a person like that means a whole pile of other things. It means I am definitely not okay, Vince. I'm really struggling right now. I'm spiraling. There's a whole pile going on. I just don't know how I'm going to cope, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, right, that's it. I need to reach out to her properly. So I said, let's jump on a Zoom call. She goes, no, I can't jump on a Zoom call now. Haven't done my hair and makeup. And I went, well, neither have I. So you're okay. And we laughed. And finally, I got her onto a Zoom call, and she just burst into tears. And I was like, Vince, I'm really struggling. I'm spiraling right now. And the reason that happened, funny enough, was from success. So she was going through a launch phase. Forbes had reached out and said, hey, we want to do this profile on you. As an entrepreneur, that's a pretty big deal. So they said, what we want you to do is we want you to fill out all this content. So they sent her these things that she had to write. At the same time, she had a large corporate come to her and go, hey, I know you're doing your coaching work and things like that, but I really need you to do some consultation work for us. We're going to pay you bucket loads of money, essentially. So can you put a proposal together for us? So she had these 2 things that she had to do: a proposal and a writing up the thing for Forbes. And immediately didn't feel worthy of that. Just started to feel overwhelmed at this potential success right in front of her. So procrastinated. And then a week went by and she hadn't started either of those. 2 weeks went by, same again. 3 weeks went by, same again. To the point where it actually got really embarrassing, and then shame kicked in. And then she didn't feel like she was like comparing herself. So other people would do this easily. Why can't I do this easily? I'm such a failure. I'm such a loser. And while she was describing this to me, this was very raw and very open for her. And she was talking about this pain that she had. And I just turned around and went, oh my goodness, same here. She went, well, I said, oh yeah, this was me last Tuesday. And I started talking about the fact that I do this as well. I said, funny enough, it was a large corporate who reached out to me and said, look, we need your expertise. And the weirdest thing is, it was about lead generation for an insurance brokerage. I'm going, I could do this in my sleep. Like, this is easy. And they said, yeah, we just need you for a weekend. We just basically need you to put some effort into putting a strategy together for us. And I'm like, yep, sure, not a problem. They said, great, put a proposal together. Okay. And then I got in my own head and I thought, if I put the proposal together, then it's not going to be as good as the agencies they normally deal with, because I'm not an agency. And what if it's not what they expected? And what if they reject me? What if they think, oh man, we wanted it, but actually this guy's an idiot? What if, all these thoughts? And it just caused me to procrastinate and to the point where I didn't take any action. So I told her that, and I said I had to front up to that, and I told her what I did. I actually reached out to them. I thought, I woke up one morning and thought, I need to change this pattern. I need to disrupt this pattern immediately. So I thought, I reached out to them and said, look, I just want to be open and honest with you. I'm really struggling putting this proposal together. It's not because I don't understand this. I could do this literally in my sleep. You guys know I'm the expert in this. I said, but the problem I've got is I started getting into my own head, and I was really open with them. I said, I started getting in my own head about, what you're expecting for the proposal. And that started to make me a bit overwhelmed. And I procrastinated to the point where it's just embarrassing. So I totally understand if you don't want to deal with me, but if you do, let's crush this. And they said, actually, we really need your help. Get into the office now. We got in there. We just wrote it up on a whiteboard. Done. No proposal necessary. That's what we need to deliver. Did that and got paid heaps of money for it. But I told her this story, and in sharing that story with her and being open with her about that, and her being open with me, we realized we all go through the same kind of stuff. Like, seriously, we're the best at getting in our own way, and a lot of that comes from that insecurity and that fear, or that like the imposter syndrome aspect of it. So having somebody else to talk to is incredibly important, but being emotionally honest about that is going to help you to deal with it. So we started saying, hey, we need to talk about this a lot more with other people. So we did. We even did a Facebook Live in an entrepreneurs group and the two of us just joking around, talking about what we've been through, and put ourselves out there very vulnerably, man, like very vulnerably. Like people could easily judge you for that kind of thing and say, well, you can't, you procrastinate on putting together a proposal. What the hell is wrong with you? You call yourselves amazing entrepreneurs. Like people do this all the time. But actually the response from people was, oh, so good to know I'm not alone. So good to know I go through that as well. And as you guys, so I think that's one of the keys, is actually being emotionally honest about it. Actually getting out of our own way, essentially, and having someone, you mentioned it before, having someone to hold you to account is one of the most important parts of all of it. It's one of the things, like you said, every successful entrepreneur, and I mean I'll be very surprised if there was a single successful entrepreneur that didn't have some form of mentor or coach or someone speaking into their life. And the reason for that is because they've realized the truth that we need to realize, and that is you can't do this alone. You can't do entrepreneurship alone. You can't do life alone. We are not designed to be alone. You need people that can prop you up when they need to, people that can lift you up when you fall down, people that can stand by your side, celebrate your successes with you. So you need to make sure you got people speaking into you.
Yeah, and I think also, Vince, you need people to push you. Like
Oh yeah,
the truth of it, and I think about this often, but there is a space in this conversation around mental health, around personal development, around growth, around everything where, you got to get pushed a little bit. Like
Yep.
if you really want to, because you have to get so uncomfortable. This is where I think people fail to understand one of the greatest benefits of having a coach. It's so that you get so incredibly uncomfortable that you're forced to grow because you
Yeah.
want the thing so badly on the other side of the action. Right. And it's difficult, right? Because on the other side of every single risk that you take is fear. And that fear only goes away. Like it keeps you awake at night, right? You're like, man, you got to pull the fucking Band-Aid off. Like you just have to put yourself in a position to be successful in your life by being willing to see what's on the other side of that fear. Leave the job, leave the relationship, start the business, travel the world, do the thing that keeps you awake at night. And in that, having some support, having someone around you, not a cheerleader, but someone to be empathetic with you, someone to be compassionate with you, but simultaneously say, yo, get your shit together. Like that is so game changing, right?
Yeah,
I don't think getting like rah-rah helps that much, right? I don't think someone like you got this really gets it done. But I do think someone saying, I understand where you are. I have been there. Let's go make it happen is the difference between success and failure in your life. One of the things I'm really curious about, Vince, this idea about chasing the insights. Talk to me not only about what the podcast is and what that means, but as a whole, what kind of role does that play into your life?
Man, this plays a big one. So this came through early on in my career. So a lot of the startups I was creating, one of the things I realized is that we come at it with this mentality. We come at this with this try or fail. So either succeed or fail, rather. So you come at these things, and I was, early on trying to build this business, and it was like, right, okay, I need to test something. So I went out there, I need to validate this thing. So I went out and I thought, I'm going to validate this idea of this business we're building. I'm going to grab a clipboard, I'm going to grab a pen, I'm going to go on the street, and I'm going to get feedback from people. And that was scary, because what if they don't agree with me that this is going to be a brilliant, brilliant idea? I soon discovered, by the way, that when you grab a clipboard and go out in the street and try and interact with people, they think you're a crazy street preacher or you're asking for money. So I learned some new colorful swear words. That was fun. But nobody really responded to me. But I finally figured it out. I ended up hacking a coffee line. So I went into a cafe and started saying to people, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if you give me some feedback. So I was getting all this feedback around it. And one of the things I realized is when we come at things like that, when we come at life, when we come at business, we come with our own bias. We come with our own cognitive bias, which is we're looking to try and prove that we're right. We're looking to try and prove that we know what we're doing. And that's how I was approaching this originally. I was looking at going, hey, I've got this great idea. Do you agree it's a great idea? Rather than actually getting them to be truthful and open with me, telling stories, all those kind of things. So I started realizing that I was looking at this wrong. I was looking at this as I'm going to try something and it's either going to succeed or I'm going to be a failure. Instead, I had to reframe that in my mind and go, I'm going to try something and I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to try something and it'll either succeed and prove my hypotheses, or it's going to disprove my hypothesis. And therefore, I am now going to have learned something major from it. I'm going to gain more insights. So I started trying to bring that into my own life. And then I started, every time I built a team, I was like, right, we're going to try experimentation. We're going to try new things. We're going to try all these different things to push the needle for our business or push the needle for what it was we're building. And in doing so, I had to change their mentality and say, okay, guys, it's not about chasing the wins. It's not about chasing the success. It's about chasing the insights. When you approach this and go, everything I try is going to be a learning experience for me, everything I try is going to add value to me, that helps you to basically take that leap that you talked about before, Michael. It helps you to actually press in and go, you know what? I've got this, because on the other side of this is either success or success. It's success or it's learning. So that became the framework that I kind of started creating through my businesses and that. And then for me, I realized that transcended so much more about life than it was just about entrepreneurship. And the biggest example of me goes all the way back to that age 11, because as well as having this inspirational teacher, as well as having this teacher that really believed in me, I had something else at that school that I hadn't encountered before, or certainly hadn't encountered in the school environment. You see, growing up in a home where you have a bully, where you have somebody who just oppresses you and makes you feel like you don't have any value, I still had school as my safe space. But at age 11, I go into this class and I suddenly found I had a bully at school. And I was like, well, now I have no safe space at all. Now I've got nowhere. Basically, everywhere I am, I'm constantly anxious. I'm constantly in fear. So that was not healthy for me mentally. Obviously, it wasn't healthy for me at all. But anyway, so for 2 years, this guy made my life an absolute hell. Then we got to age 12. We're about to go off to high school, off to college. And he went to a different one to me. So I was like, oh, man, I am free. This is the best day of my life. I no longer have this bully. This is going to be glorious. Now we just got, I had a few kind of minor bullies, but none to the extent that he had tormented me for those 2 years. So I went off to my college and I'm like, right. Now, when I got to college, I made a decision at that point. I'm sick of, again, being a victim. I'm sick of people taking advantage of me. So I learned to fight. And I learned that through learning martial arts. I did Thai boxing, I did boxing, I did Kung Fu, and I threw myself into those. I was like, if I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do this hardcore. So I was training every single day from 13 till probably 17. And I certainly wouldn't be in an action movie, but I was like, I could defend myself if I need to. But then came the glorious moment, because I found out that this bully that I had many years ago at this intermediate school, he was being transferred to my school. Now, I'm an avid movie watcher. I've seen every 80s movie, every John Hughes movie. I've seen Revenge of the Nerds. I know this narrative. I'm like, I know what's going to happen there. This is going to be glorious. This is the moment where the victim, the moment where the oppressed one comes out on top. The underdog finally wins, and the bully finally gets his comeuppance. I'm like, this is going to be a glorious moment, man. So he transferred to my school, and I saw him walk past, and I'm like, ha, here we go. So I yelled his name and I yelled some expletives, and he turned around as he always did, and he took some swings at me. But this time it was different. Instead of taking swings and them connecting, I just moved out of the way. I'm like, nah, nope. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. It was all building up inside me. I'm like, here it comes. He finally took this other swing at me, and I'm like, no, bam, I laid him out. I'm not a violent person at all, but I was like, this has been building up in me for so long. And he went down like a light. He was out cold. And I thought, this is going to be glorious, except I felt terrible. I was like, this is not what I pictured this would turn out like. And then I found myself in the principal's office, as you do when you fight at school. And the principal pulled me aside and he said, look, do you know why he got transferred to this school? And I said, look, I've got no idea. I don't care. I was a 17-year-old. I was trying to be staunch. I'm like, whatever. And he goes, well, you should care. And he said, because this boy and his sister and his mother had been brutally abused by their father since he was a toddler. In fact, the father had beaten them so badly that his mother actually passed away in front of him and his sister. In other words, the dad murdered the mum in front of the two of them. Now, the dad went off to jail, and the two kids were put in the custody of an auntie and uncle who lived near our school, and that's why they got transferred to our school. And I remember the sinking feeling in my stomach, and I said, well, I didn't know that. And he goes, I wouldn't expect you did. He goes, but of all the people that could possibly have understood what he was going through, of all the people that could possibly have been there for him, I would have thought you would have been the one. And that was a moment that hit me like a brick, Michael, because I learned two things in that moment. One, I learned I wasn't the hero of that story. I was the villain, right? I built up all these 80s movies. By the way, 80s movies lie to you, okay? Any of those movies where the underdog comes out on top, they are absolute rubbish, right? Violence solves nothing. Trust me on that one. But the other thing I learned there is I had no idea this man's story. I had no idea why he reacted the way that he did. I had no idea why he behaved and why he took that out on me. But by learning that, I would have had the opportunity to be there for him. I had the opportunity to empathize with him, to say, hey, I've gone through the same, man. you doesn't have to end the way that you think it has to end. Now, it may not have helped him, but it may have. And that's what I learned. You have to get insanely curious about everybody. You have to understand. And that's what drove me on the journey towards doing what I do now. And marketing itself is just understanding people's behavior, understanding their minds. But you have to be inherently curious. You have to look for insights. You have to look for all those little points that give you the indicator of what's going on in that person's life. It's one of the things I taught my kids when we were walking down the street. I would teach them about this. In fact, one of my proudest moments as a parent, man, like, I know you're not supposed to have favorite kids. Both of my kids are my favorite. I'm just saying that out loud now in case they're listening to this. But I remember when my daughter was she was at, it would have been, it wasn't college, primary school. She would have been around 10, just before 10. And she was hanging out with a group of girls that were typical girls of that age. They all come with their own baggage and their own insecurity. And what had happened, there was a scenario that happened. It was right outside the principal's office. And the principal called us into the school. And we're like, honestly, man, my daughter was such a goody two-shoes. We told her that, like, we're not going to celebrate every time you get, top of the class and that anymore because it's getting boring. Like, just do something naughty, do something mischievous, get detention, then we'll celebrate. We'll take you out for dinner. And we're half joking with her, but we kind of secretly were hoping she did something naughty. And then the principal called us in and said, I need to tell you about something that happened. We're like, oh, she's done something wrong. Then we're like, oh, what did she do? But what had happened was the principal witnessed this entire scenario. So my daughter was there with a bunch of other girls, and there was one girl there that was slightly overweight, right? And my daughter's friends were there, and they were all chatting away. And one of them turned around and said, "Oh, we're going to go and play some sporty game. I can't remember what it was, like netball or something. We're going to go and play netball, but obviously you can't play that because you won't be able to keep up with us." And my daughter just saw the look on this other girl's face, this look of rejection, of just being judged, of like shame and everything. And my daughter just went, "No." And she walked in front of the girl, put her behind her to protect her. And she turned around and she spoke directly to her friend, her best friend, who said this. And she goes, I'm thinking I should probably change the names here. Call her Jane. She goes, "Jane, look, this person is my friend as much as your friend, as much as all of our friend, right? And I don't like the way that you talk to her. And I know the only reason you're doing that is because you're worried if we spend time with her, we're not going to spend time with you. But you need to understand you're as much of a friend as well, and we value you." And then she turned to the person next to her and she said, "You're only reacting like this because you want to be included. You think if you speak out against this, even though you know that was horrible what just happened, if you speak out against that, you're going to get rejected and you're worried about that. But you don't have to be worried. We accept you who you are." Then she spoke to every individual in there around their motivation as to why they were picking on this one individual. Then she turned around and she said, "Look, guys, I love you all, right? But right now I'm going to go and play with her. And when you guys are ready, come and apologize to her. We can hug it out and then we can all play together." And next thing you know, there was this, crying and group hugs, all this kind of thing. It was an incredibly beautiful moment. I'm sitting there in this principal's office thinking to myself, hold it together, man. And then realize I'm dripping tears everywhere. I'm like, okay, I'm not holding it together at all. It was such a proud parent moment to know that she not only stood up for this girl, but she understood the motivation of everybody there. She didn't do the stupid thing that I did at college and lash out at that particular person for their behavior. She understood the motivations behind it. She understood the insights that she was gaining from their interactions. And she just went, "I'm going to speak to that and I'm going to bring you all together." So, she's a far better human being than I am, man.
That's an amazing story, Vince. And there's so much you can take away from that. And, the thing that comes to my mind is, I used to be of the persuasion of the best way to make a bully stop bullying you is to punch you in the face. And it might actually be just give them a hug. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the reality is, and I love this idea of chasing the insights because you just don't know. It's the old adage, like, don't judge someone until you walk a mile in their shoes. And, I think we're all guilty of this. So I don't want to pass judgment here. I'm always just trying to be better about, don't judge that person. You have no idea, and like, even though my life was like really disastrous growing up, whether theirs was worse or not has nothing to do with the fact that it has nothing to do with me. And so the best thing is to live this life with compassion, with vulnerability, with hope, and just try to leave a better impact on the world than what you came into. And that's such a big driver for me. And obviously you've impacted that in your kids and your lineage, and that'll live far beyond you. And that's a really beautiful moment. Vince, my friend, before I ask you my last question, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Oh man, I made that super easy, Michael. Just go to chasingtheinsights.com. It's the home of my podcast. I have amazing guests on there, including Michael. But also it's where you'll find my books. You'll find links to me on social. And look, reach out to me on social, connect with me. Unless you're a spammer. I don't really like spammers too much. But if you just really want to get to know someone, have a conversation, I'm always available there. And if you are an entrepreneur, I know there'll be some in the audience here, and you really are struggling with marketing, there's also a link on there to book a free call with me. Totally encourage you to do that. I give you a free strategy call where I'll give you clarity on any issue that you're really, really struggling with there in marketing.
Brilliant. Vince, my friend, my last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be unbroken?
To be wow, this is such a profound question, man. I love this. So to be unbroken to me, it's not necessarily about not having scars, not having broken bits, essentially. It's not being bound by that. And what I mean by that, it's actually truly understanding who you are, because in that is so much freedom. It's understanding that you're flawed, that, I like the person that I am. I like the person that I am. I've always been told I'm too nice. I've always been told all these negative aspects of that. And I realized one day, these are not weaknesses, these are superpowers, because this is how I want people to turn up for me. Right. So, and I realized that that's not for everyone. I realized that I have downsides. I suffer from depression. I suffer from anxiety. I realize there are days where I don't want to get out of bed. I realize there are things that I do that irritate other people. But by owning all of this, by realizing, hey, Vince, you're a giant nerd, right? You're a Star Wars fanboy. You love everything Marvel. You're a comic book nerd. You're just owning who you are. By owning all of that, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything, means you are unbroken, because you are unfettered. There is nothing that is holding you down, right? Being unbroken is not about being completely whole. It's about not being held down.
I love that. Very well said, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Unbroken Nation, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, leave a review, tell a friend. And until next time, my friends, be unbroken. I'll see ya.